Let's get into our seminar here. You know, this is the very first seminar, our extreme seminar series that we've done here at Chaos, focused on a freshwater topic. We are, for the most part, saltwater anglers. That's what we do. However, Florida is just a mecca for fishing, not only offshore, but even on the freshwater side. You know, we have the Florida state fish. Anybody know on the freshwater side? Largemouth bass, okay? This is the largemouth bass capital of the world. Everybody's heard of Lake Okeechobee, right? And there's largemouth bass everywhere, pretty much that puddle outside. Go out there, throw a bait, eventually you'll catch a largemouth bass. Okay, they're in every pond, it seems, and every canal, you know, all of these golf course lakes. And it really is a super popular species. There's perch, there's crappie, there's pickerel, there's all gars, there's all sorts of fish in Florida, you know, available to freshwater anglers. However, here in the southern portion of the state, we have a really unique scenario that has unfolded over the last couple of decades. Not only do we have phenomenal largemouth bass fishing, but we also have exotic species, species that were introduced through a variety of means, some intentional, some not so intentional, okay, that have really developed into viable fisheries. There are over 30 different exotic species that are now breeding in Florida waters. Most of them in the southern portion, in the southern half of the state, and certainly here in Broward and Dade County and Palm Beach County, where the water is the warmest, okay, because a lot of these exotic species cannot withstand cold water. So you don't see a lot of the fish that we're going to be talking about tonight further north than Palm Beach County. You know, you just don't see them up there. And again, this is really, we're in the bullseye, the mecca right here in Broward County. We are very, very fortunate. And like I said, on the border here between Miami and Dade County, Broward, Palm Beach, we're right in the heart of it. We're in the thick of it, of these exotic species. Tilapias, Mayan cichlids, you know, all sorts of different fish. And then there are a few that really, really stand out. One of them is the snakehead. One of them is the peacock bass. And one of them is the clown knifefish. Those are the three species that we're really going to be talking a lot about tonight. Now understand, I spend the vast majority, if not all of my time offshore fishing, you know, for a wide variety of species. It's really hard to get a 37-foot CV with triple outboards in a lake, okay? I just probably wouldn't go over too well. So I spend most of my time offshore. However, I'm an angler, just like everybody else. We all fish saltwater and freshwater. I started my career fishing for fishing in freshwater, and I certainly enjoy it. And really here in South Florida, some of the opportunities that have developed have really piqued my interest even more on the freshwater side, you know, and I've enjoyed some of it, and certainly I'd like to do even more of it. A few years back, aside from going bass fishing and peacock bass fishing a number of times, I started to hear some rumors, you know, a few years back of this guy, okay, this saltwater angler. This guy, he's been fishing saltwater commercially and on, you know, for tournaments and sport fish boats for close to 30 years. You know, just some rumors floating around. And then I heard that he gave all of that up one day, just like this. Just said, hey, forget all of that. I'm not fishing offshore. I'm not going to Venezuela or Costa Rica or, you know, Mexico or all of these exotic destinations where this guy was fishing. He decided to give all of that up and to transition to the freshwater side, you know, for a variety of different reasons. Certainly it's a little bit more comfortable to fish freshwater than it is offshore. The weather isn't as big of a factor as it is on the freshwater side. But what was exciting is I heard that he was using some really cool tactics to catch some really cool fish. And I wanted to get in on it. So I contacted this guy. And I hooked up with him at a local lake here, not far from here, 15, 20 minutes from here. Hooked up with him, met him at the boat ramp, and he pulls up and he's got this big 24-foot Carolina skiff, something that you would see over in Crystal River, a guy red fishing or something like that. Which right out of the gate, I'm like, what is that thing? That's kind of odd to see in a lake. But what was really, surprising was that right on this boat, he had this 100-gallon live well. And it was filled with hundreds of shad, live shad, little live shad. And immediately I thought to myself, I said, this is not going to be your ordinary bass trip. This is going to be something different, something I've never done on a lake before. And I was still a little mystified as to exactly what are we going to be doing here. So we go snaking down these canals, and around this corner and around this tree and around this development and down this canal and a left here and under that bridge. And suddenly here we are. We set up shop and he starts live chumming with all of these shad. Just like we would do offshore for king mackerel and blackfin tuna, something right now that is peaking. Not uncommon to go offshore and live chum with pilchards or threadfin herring to catch these blackfin tuna, and of course the dolphin and the sailfish and all of these pelagic fish. Well, he was using the same tactic that we would use offshore, inshore, to attract all of these fish and to get that bite fired up. And it's all relative. Obviously, we weren't fishing with 30-pound class tackle, 20-pound class tackle. It was all really, really light stuff. But it was absolutely awesome to be live chumming in a lake. And within minutes, you start to see fish popping up on the surface and boiling on the baits. And I thought, boy, this is really exciting. And this is certainly different than any sort of bass fishing that I've ever done with a rubber worm, or a lizard or anything like that. And before you know it, to make a long story short, when the day was done, we caught a whole mess of peacock bass, and we caught close to I can't even remember if it was 8 or 9, whatever it was, big clown knifefish, these awesome exotic clown knifefish that I would never believe were in our local waters, right in your own backyard, literally right in people's backyard. And one cast would be a nice largemouth, the next cast would be a clown knifefish, the next cast would be a big peacock. We'd have double headers of a peacock and a clown knifefish. Super exciting stuff. And I realized by the time that day was over, I'd learned so much from this guy about the freshwater fishing in Florida and how these exotic species were even introduced into our waters that I said, man, this guy is really an expert on this subject. So I'd like to introduce Captain Bill Lepre. He's our guest speaker for the night. Okay? Captain Bill runs a business called South Florida Bass Charters. You can find Bill on the web. You can find Bill on Instagram and Facebook. Okay? And he literally, Bill, how many trips a year do you fish for these exotic species on average?
Last year I did 425 trips.
425 trips. This guy knows a lot more about peacock bass than I know. I can tell you that right now. So I really think it's important to benefit everybody that we have somebody here who knows so much about not only the clown knifefish and the peacocks, but even the snakeheads. And I know a lot of guys, I overheard them talking about snakeheads and how exciting that is. So we're going to talk about each of these 3 species independently. Okay, and they certainly mix, correct?
Yes.
I mean, there's certainly these species mixed in the same bodies of water, but the tactics and the techniques when you're looking for each of these independent species are going to vary slightly. So we're going to talk about each one. I think for starters, why don't we touch on, there's a magazine for you. Okay? Why don't we touch on the snakeheads? Okay, here's a species that is from Asia. Okay, that's really from Asia, and it's a staple in Asia as a food fish across Asia. Somehow or another, here in Florida, they ended up in our waterways. And to the best of my knowledge, Bill, you can confirm with me, wasn't the first reported snakehead case somewhere around the year 2000?
I think so.
Okay.
From what I've heard, like the C14 canal, which Larry, I think, is down there, like around Rock Island Road and University, Coral Springs, South Coral Springs. There was a guy that had them basically penned up, I think raising them or something, and during maybe a hurricane or some event, a bunch of them got into that C14 canal, which connects to a ton of different waterways that go all through Tamarack, Coral Springs. That's where.
So it's a
that was
giant
kind of the
maze,
epicenter.
right? It's a giant maze.
It was a mass release.
Got it.
Kind of went on at one time. That's what I've heard.
And
Can't
they
confirm it,
have
but that's what I've heard.
exploded.
Yes.
They have exploded. Okay, and these snakeheads, they, a lot of people And we also, by the way, I just want to just pause for 1 second. We also have Justin from the FWC here. Okay, guys, a big hand to Justin from the FWC. These guys
All right,
not only...
I'm out of here. I'll see you later. I'm just kidding.
Right. These
Yeah,
guys
thanks
not
for the
only
warning.
keep us safe, you know, on the water, but they protect our fisheries. You know, we can't say enough about them, honestly.
Absolutely.
So I really want to just take one more second to give these guys a big hand, okay? So, and Justin, feel free to chime in at any time if we're, you know, you're in it. You're that FWC guy that's out there. You see it. Feel free to correct us or to chime in at any time if you'd like. So the
Is he
snakeheads.
mic'd up?
Yeah, no, but he's got a gun. So, the snakeheads were introduced, as we know, it's not a native species, and they've exploded because they have really an unlimited food source. They're very aggressive. They eat finfish, they eat turtles, they eat mice, and they eat lizards, birds, and they love frogs. Okay, they absolutely love frogs. And even from my experience snakehead fishing, and certainly you can confirm, if there was one bait that you had to use to target and catch snakehead, I would have to believe it would be the frog.
Be a frog.
Okay,
yeah,
it would
for
be a frog, something that imitates a frog. And in this particular case, you know, just to show you one of many, many options, this is just a live target frog. You know, they come in a million different variations. It's anything that resembles a frog. The key to this bait, though, is that it's got to be weedless because these snakeheads are ambush predators. They hang out under trees, in the thick of it all. They'll lay there, wait for something to come by, and then they'll dart out and crush it. So if you don't fish a weedless bait, you're probably going to be spending half your day.
All your day.
All your day. All right?
Shag and weed.
Snagging weed and cleaning your lures. So make sure that that frog is weedless. But that's really all that you need. And again, these come in many, many variations. Soft rubber frogs with the, you know, legs that flip and flop. But the key is that it's a top water bait. It's up on the surface. It does not sink or suspend. It is always up on that surface. And as you're working that back toward the boat or along a shoreline, and keep in mind, you certainly can do this from land, and you certainly can do this if you're accessing these waterways by boat. You know, and there's a lot of these bass boats, kayaks, canoes, genoos. I mean, certainly a lot of different craft that you can enter these freshwater areas with, but a lot of guys like to fish for the snakehead right from land, you know, or I should say directly from land. And again, there's a lot of different areas, and Bill will talk a little bit more about where those are. But that frog is the key bait, okay? Understand that these fish are very aggressive, these snakeheads. They will reach more than 10 pounds in weight. Okay, the Florida record, I believe, is over 12 pounds, but it's
15.
15.
And that guy caught it right down there with a gambler shirt on.
That guy
That's
right
Corey.
there?
Yeah.
Corey, congratulations on the
he's
state record
snakehead
snakehead.
holder,
15 pounds.
currently.
So certainly these fish can grow really big. And remember, make a left, make a right, you know.
Yeah.
But remember, we're not talking about fishing out on the ocean, you know, where even a 15-pound blackfin tuna, 15-pound dolphin, whatever is an impressive fish. We're talking about a lake or a canal or a creek or a little cove, you know, behind somebody's townhouse or something like that. You know, where a 15-pound fish in that environment is a whole different ball game than it is, you know, out in the ocean. So to be able to go out and target these fish that could reach that size is impressive and exciting. You know, it's not like you're going bluegill fishing for a fish this big. You're going out there with an opportunity to catch big quality fish. Point is, again, I mean, a frog, that's really all you need. Lots of variations. You know, let's talk about where, you know, and certainly we're not going to put a big red X, but the truth of the matter is fish swim. Okay, fish swim. And there are so many areas that hold these snakeheads. It's not like you have to be in one little corner at one time. You know, the bottom line, canals, you know, they don't even have to have any sort of moving water because these snakeheads can breathe air. They're air breathers. So it literally, as a matter of fact, they're even been known to walk on land. How about that? Okay, they're related to the mudfish and have been known to walk on land. Wouldn't that be creepy if you saw a 10-pound fish walking across the street? You know, but certainly it could happen. Okay, but again, they can breathe air, so any sort of lake or canal in this urban jungle that we live in here in South Florida potentially holds these snakeheads. Okay, but what are the key factors, Bill? What are we looking for? If we just walk up to a canal, or if we're just entering a canal by boat, there's so much water. How do we pinpoint those snakeheads? What are we looking for?
Really, with snakeheads, it's just basically trial and error. Like, find something in between Palm Beach County, basically the border, and the south end of Broward County. Find some canals, Google Maps, we all have it now. You know, pull over, have a frog, and walk and cast parallel to the bank as far as you can with a spinning rod or a bait caster, whatever you're comfortable with, and just work that frog along the very edge of the bank, you know, right on top of the weeds, maybe, you know, a foot off the banks, and just walk. And if you don't get a bite and you're getting tired, because that's what happens, you know, you only want to walk as far as you want to walk back. So that's kind of like my thing. If I don't get a bite in the first half mile, I'm like, okay, maybe they're not here. So I'll turn around and then just try another spot. Just bounce around spots, and you'll see them. You'll spook them off the bank. When you're walking up the banks, you know, fishing the banks, you're going to see them take off. And if you see the fish there, then you know that they're in there. They sit right up on the bank, real close. When you walk up on them, you know, they're sensitive. They'll spook. They'll go thrashing off the bank, and that's what it is. It's not, you know, that's what it is. A snakehead. If you see it, that's, you know, something that's been sitting right up close, you know, on the bank. So, you know, that's it. You walk a spot. If it's not producing, then
you move on.
You just move on.
Right. So it seems like it's pretty easy, but detail oriented. You know, I don't want to say easy. Don't think you're just going to grab this rod with a frog and go park on the side.
You
Well, you might.
You never know.
True, absolutely.
It could happen.
But obviously, you've got to do some homework. You've got to put in the time. And just like every other fishery, the more time that you put into it, the more you're going to get dialed in, the more patterns you're going to realize, you know, and the more you're going to learn about these fish, and the more successful that you're going to be. One thing I've taken away from this already is no matter what body of water that I'm fishing, if I'm looking for snakeheads, I'm not casting into the middle.
No,
okay? I'm not
don't cast
fishing
in the
the
middle.
deep. I'm not looking for the middle. You know, I want to fish as tight as I can to that bank. Also understand why. Remember what you're doing. You're fishing a frog. You ever see a frog swimming across an open lake? Okay, we know that frog knows what's going to happen if it's out there in the open.
When they're out in the middle, if you ever see them in the middle of the canal, they're like this. And they're just kind of drifting with the wind, playing dead. The frogs will move when they're on the edge.
Because they know, again, what could happen. So obviously that's where their primary food source is right along those edges and right along the banks. So certainly that's where we're going to target those snakeheads. The average fish, I think you'll agree, probably 3 to 5 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark. Right. Certainly
Unless
with the...
you're Corey, then
Unless
it's like
you're
8 to 12.
Right. Catches all the big ones, slob slayer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, as Bill said, you've got to put in that time. Certainly you can walk those banks. Remember that there's a lot of property that's private property and off limits.
And those are the best spots.
And those are definitely the best spots.
Always.
Right.
Always, if it says no fishing, or there's like a guy in a golf cart, security guard chasing you, you know there's snakeheads there for sure, 100%. Right. That's where the biggest ones are going to be.
And I think what's important, what a lot of people don't realize, is that all of these canals are connected from these culverts. You know, you may not see them. You may just see one creek or canal, but you don't realize that that's an entire maze, and that fish can literally swim around that maze for miles and miles and miles. You know,
A lot of the canals, especially in Tamarack and Coral Springs and down that way, are all connected. We don't have quite as much of that up north in Palm Beach County, but there's still some of it. But yeah, there's a maze of canals and, you know, down south they're just endless.
So what he brought up and what we're talking about here is, can you access private waters from a boat? The answer is yes. You can access private waters. You're not going to launch your skiff or your rowboat behind somebody's house. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that if it's we're saying you could access that area on your boat. Stay away from the edges of the canals, but you can certainly cast toward those edges of the canals. You know, are there going to be particular scenarios where you have a guy who comes out there because it's an association and he's screaming at you because who are you fishing in this development? Absolutely. And certainly we encourage you to respect that, be polite. You know, don't fly the guy the bird and tell him, you know, what are you going to do about it? You know, obviously.
A little common sense goes a long way.
Exactly.
When you're doing
Courtesy.
that
That's
kind of
all.
thing. You
That's
just,
all
you
it's
know,
about. Is
pretend
courtesy.
you live there, and if someone was back there, or you know, whatever.
Right.
I always find that a good.
So again, on these canals, you know, if you're going to access them by boat or if you're going to access them, you know, by land, make sure you abide by these private property signs, be respectful. It's all common sense, you know, it really is. That's what it boils down to. So is there a weather pattern or a time of the year where you can pattern snakeheads? You know, is it 365 days a year, any day when I pull over, I grab my rod, I might be able to catch one? Or how do I stack the odds in my favor?
I think you can catch them. I think you can catch them year round. I think when it gets cold, they're less active.
Little lethargic.
And then right now they're spawning. They have fry balls. You'll see a big mass of snakehead fry like this, and there'll be parents guarding them. So they're a little less likely to eat in that scenario because they're protecting fry like peacocks do.
Right.
You know, for some reason, the fish from other places are much more protective of their young than our native fish.
Got it.
You know, like a bass, the babies are born, they eat half of them and then swim away.
Got it.
They're not good parents. But these exotic
But the snakehead,
fish,
the peacocks are great
peacocks
parents.
are great parents. The snakeheads are great parents. I've seen pairs of snakeheads, you know, with their fry until they're, you know, 4 to 6 inches long. So, you know, they're protective. So as we get later in the summer, it seems like to me once the fry's gone, then they'll eat a little bit better. August, September, as you kind of get further.
So the
away
warmer
from
it
that.
gets, the hotter it gets,
the better.
you know, the better it gets for
Yeah,
sure.
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
pretty simple and certainly makes a lot of sense. Let's also talk a little bit about tackle. As Bill mentioned, you know, a spinning rod. Listen, some people are really good with casting rods, bait casters. Certainly that's applicable and can work when throwing a
This would be a
frog.
little bit light for snakeheads because remember, you're fishing in heavy cover. Like my my outfit of choice was a bait caster with 65-pound braid. I'm not
Wait a
not
second.
out
Well,
there.
hold on.
I'm not out there to
We're
like,
sword fishing with 65-pound braid.
know,
Did you say
but
65-pound braid?
I fish 65-pound braid.
65-pound braid
Yeah.
for snakeheads.
I do.
And are you going straight to the lure, straight to a frog, or do you have?
I usually use like a 40-pound fluorocarbon leader.
Okay.
I don't like using straight braid typically because sometimes the braid will slip through the eye of your big worm hook or whatever. So I always use a little bit of fluoro or whatever, 40-pound mono. It doesn't have to be fluoro. And you know, I like to do that.
So you really need to beef it up.
Well, because
you know,
you're fishing in such
heavy cover
that, I mean, if you hook a 7, 8, 9-pound snakehead and it dives down in the weeds, you're just going to break off. And then that might be your only big, I mean, you want to take advantage. You got to pull them out of a lot of tight places, and I just assume I have a shot to catch. If I got a nice fish on, I want to catch them.
And the goal is to kill them.
Not for me, but, you know, that's another whole... That's something we could spend all night talking about.
Let's touch on that real quick because Florida law, FWC, Justin, correct me, states that it's against the law to release exotic species. So if I catch a snakehead, which is an exotic species, I cannot, by law, release that fish. Is that right? Help us understand this here a little bit. Okay, and again, by law, we just clarified, you're not supposed to release them. You are supposed to harvest them. There's no bag limit. There's no size limit. So every snakehead you catch, go ahead and fillet it. If you want to eat it up, they also make absolutely awesome strip baits for swordfish, okay? Because they're very, very durable. That skin is like leather. And you can make a killer strip bait out of a snakehead. It's very, very common. We use them a lot when we're sword fishing. So they're, you know, they have other value to those snakeheads other than just as a food fish. And if you're really dialed in and you're catching them and you don't know what to do with them and you don't want to eat them, go to your local tackle shop. There's a number of tackle shops that'll either give you credit for them, you know, because they're going to use them to rig swordfish baits. So they'll either give you some sort of credit or some sort of trade. So there's certainly something that you can do with them. You know, we talked about your bait being up on top on the surface. We talked about fishing right along the banks. You know, all of these canals, Miami, Broward. How far north is that snakehead territory go? How far up?
I've seen them all the way up to West Palm Beach.
All the way to West Palm Beach, but no further than that, obviously. Not yet.
I don't fish any further than that.
Okay.
So I couldn't give you anything further than like West Palm Beach Airport, but they're all the way up there.
Are they? Yeah, and expanding fast.
I wouldn't say fast. I mean, I'm not freaking out that everything, that's the thing with snakeheads. It's like, I think my personal opinion is that it was overblown when it first started.
Right.
It was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, and everyone's like, oh, there's going to be, and if snakeheads got into the wrong places that were like, that counted on like bass fishing, like Lake Okeechobee or something, or, some lakes where they really, but we're fishing like drainage canals. I mean, there's not a lot of bass in there anyway that haven't already been killed by some guy on a bucket or, fishing. I mean, people keep fish.
Sure.
This is Florida.
Yeah,
of
course.
And the snakeheads is just, to me, just like, they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. We're not, all of us can fish every day for the next 100 years, and they're still going to be here.
Right.
So for me, it's just another fish for us to target that's fun for my customers to catch.
And just to clarify this a little bit, what Bill was referring to, when snakeheads were really becoming popular, everybody was so worried that these snakeheads are so aggressive, they're going to eat all of the baby bass, they're going to eat all of the peacock bass, they're going to eat everything that's worth catching, and the only thing that's going to be left in these drainage canals are going to be snakeheads. And that's the only thing that's going to be left there. But the truth of the matter is that there's a wide variety of predatory birds and predatory fish that are already eating the fry from bass and from peacocks. So this is just something else that's in the mix. And here it is this many years later, and there's still largemouth bass, there's still peacocks, there's still all of these other fish. And they're snakeheads.
I just think it was overblown. I think the snakehead, because the Potomac River, the northern snakeheads can get into the Chesapeake estuary and cause havoc on all kinds of, striped bass population. I mean, we're fishing in like a ditch that was dug by the Army Corps of Engineers. We're not in like some super ultra sensitive, like, dynamic environment. I mean, so I'm just like not as worried. And like I said, I mean, the fish kind of have a way of working
things in
out
between them.
Is what I've found doing it as much as I do it. I mean, they're already there. It's not, you're not going to stop it, and you just kind of have to use your own judgment on what you're going to do. But there were videos and guys catching snakeheads and crushing them with bats, and these are like snakehead guides. I'm like, you're killing your own. This is what you're.
Right.
I mean, why? Why are you doing
And I've seen that myself,
understand.
and if you haven't, all you have to do is Google snakehead fishing in Florida.
Yeah,
and you'll see, like you said, these
killing
guys
them
with
with
baseball bats just whacking these things before they put them in the boat. I don't know, to me,
I have
not
a serious
necessary.
problem with that. I'm sorry. That's not what I want to do.
Yeah. Nevertheless, again, that snakehead is increasing in popularity, hard-fighting fish, and if you like any fish that attacks and blows up on a topwater bait, you're going to love snakehead fishing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because it is super exciting. It really is. Even though you're in that drainage canal that was dug by the Army Corps of Engineers, and it doesn't seem to be too glamorous, it's fishing, and it's just a unique venue. It may not be something that you're going to do every day, but when you do it and you're dialed in, it could really be a great time, and you've got that opportunity to either kick a few fish back in that slip back in, or, keep a few for the dinner table, or rig a few for swordfish baits. Like I said, there's a lot that you can do with those snakeheads. Really a pretty fish too. They seem really dark and drab and, boring, but when they're spawning and they've got all of those colors all over them, it really is an awesome fish. And what separates that snakehead from the mudfish, because a lot of people have mistaken them over the years, is that distinct tail, that distinct spot on their tail. They've got a dark spot, usually with an orange kind of
It's a red spot.
hue.
Sometimes they'll have like several spots kind of up the back half of the fish.
And
It's
when
a
you see those
it's like
spots,
a bullseye. That's
like
what they call it, a bullseye snakehead.
Exactly. So when you see that spot, that is clearly a
Mudfish
bullseye
will just be
snakehead.
one solid color. They have the same shape. It'd be an easy fish to mistake.
To mistake for somebody who's unfamiliar with
Right.
it, for sure. So look for that bullseye on the tail, okay? Interestingly, again, that 65-pound braid certainly makes sense. You're fishing in heavy cover. I know even a lot of the bass guys fish really, really heavy braid as well, in some of those areas. So really interesting.
You're going to break a lot of fish off if you fish too light. You'll figure it out real quick. It'll be like, zzz, pow. You'll be like, okay, that's not enough. Let's spool this thing up with something that we can
30
stop.
pounds.
What?
Zing pow
30,
again.
Zing pow. Okay,
Right.
50. Okay, 65.
And you're blowing through frogs, and you're missing all of these
And
fish.
the frogs
the
are
only...
expensive.
Yeah.
You know?
No, he's not
You don't
kidding.
want to blow through a ton of frogs either.
Right. Yeah,
So,
you're not
you
kidding.
know,
You're not kidding.
yeah, you want to take advantage of your bites.
Do you have a preference in that particular frog, color, brand, size? Is there any particular preference?
Well, my favorite frog, the guy makes them, he's right down there in the red. That's JD. JD's Frogs, Custom Baits.
Big hit. Man, we got all kinds of people
we
here
got
today.
some legends. We got some legends.
Did you,
in the
do you have
house.
any other frogs with you? What are the brand of these again? JD's.
JD's.
Now, there's two different sizes.
Okay.
So you have, these are the peep toads.
Pass that box around so we can get a better look at them.
Yeah, I can fill my pockets with them real quick.
So these are the peep toads, and those are the bigger, that's called the frog.
Those are the ones that I prefer, are the big ones.
This larger size right
But
here.
if you're going to
Okay.
use spinning rods to go for snakeheads, I would recommend
use
this
that.
with a 5.0 hook.
And yeah, I'm going to pass a few around. And what size hook would you recommend with
I use a 7.0.
7.0?
I use a 9.0.
9.0.
Yes.
So we're talking big hooks.
Big
okay?
hooks.
Big hooks. Single hooks, obviously,
Single hook.
not treble hooks. Okay, not circle hooks. They're all J hooks. It's like a worm hook.
It's a giant worm hook.
Giant
used for
worm
that.
hook.
Yeah.
So 7.0s or 9.0s in these larger frog sizes, and 5.0s in this smaller frog size. Would you mind if I passed a few around? So
Well, I've got, they're kind of mixed, but yeah, leave me some because that's all I have.
no, I'm not giving them away.
No,
I mean,
if you guys want to take like one apiece, I think there's enough in there for everybody.
okay,
Yeah, there we
All
go.
right.
Awesome.
big hand. Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Tell you what, why don't you just, guys, we're just gonna pass the tub around, just grab one, you know, a lucky one, okay, and just pass it around if you don't mind. Now, there's about 300 frogs in there, so if that comes back empty, somebody didn't follow the rules.
Watch those guys in the back there. Okay.
Okay, so again, you know, really nice of them to give everybody an opportunity to grab a frog. Here it is. This is all that you need. We're telling you what hook to use, a 5.0 on the smaller size, a 7.0 or 9.0 on the larger size. You know you need some heavy braid, nothing less than 50 pound, preferably 65. You know you need a heavy leader, you know, material. 40 pound is a good balance on that leader material. All you have to do is walk the banks. That's how you catch snakeheads. You know, again, it may seem easy, but it's all in the details, and you've got to do it right to have that opportunity to land those trophy fish. Really
hard to
important.
train yourself
Right.
to not
You're
set the hook
working
too
this
soon.
frog, you're swimming it across the surface,
'Cause they'll eat
snakehead
it.
comes
They'll
up,
eat it.
blows up on it instinctively. You know, as an angler, when you get that bite, first thing you want to do is haul back, you know, and set that hook. But 9 out of 10 times you do that with a snakehead, and you're going to rip that right out of his mouth. As Bill mentioned, you know, let the fish grab that bait. You're going to feel the weight of the fish. Give it a second. Let that fish turn before you set that hook. As he mentioned, it's certainly going to be a lot easier, and you're going to be more successful hooking more fish as it's swimming away from you than as he's coming, you know, in the
And
same
you hook
direction.
a lot of snakeheads, especially with these big hooks, you hook them right through the eyeball.
So his question is on the retrieve, when you're working that frog back to the boat or back to where you're standing on the bank, what is the best retrieve for that frog?
I like
Is
to
it-
rip it pretty good.
Yeah, move it
I do.
fast.
Yeah, I like to
Okay.
rip it pretty good.
So
Yeah.
it's not really a
It's not like a
twitching
bass or a
or
bass frog. You know, you'll be like just kind of get the legs moving a little bit. I like to get it
Moving.
double of what your bass speed would be.
so
you
they're
know?
such an aggressive fish. You want them to chase that frog
Yeah,
as
you-
if that
you wanna
frog is
get 'em
running away
excited.
from them.
Yeah,
You want to get them fired up.
Yes, you do.
Okay. And also remember, you know, on the rods, the length of the rod is going to make a difference as well, especially if you're fishing off the bank and you want a nice long cast. A 7.5, a 7.6 rod is going to give you a little bit more distance than, for example, a 6.6 rod. So from a boat, not as crucial, but certainly if you're a land-based angler and you want that increased casting distance, go with a little bit of a longer rod rather than a shorter rod. Just keep that in mind, okay? So now let's go ahead and move along. You know, we've talked a lot about the snakeheads, and again, we can discuss those a little bit more, you know, at the end of the seminar. But there's another wonderful exotic species in Florida that we're all privy to here in South Florida, and it's called the Peacock Bass. If that is not one of the prettiest fish that you have ever seen, okay, in any, venue anywhere around the country. Now, these peacock bass were introduced here in South Florida. They are not native to Florida waters. They were introduced back in 1984 to combat the cichlid problem, correct?
Tilapia, cichlids, non-native, Oscars.
Right, so we had
non-native
all of
fish.
these non-native fish in our canals. So what do they do to combat this problem? They introduce another non-native fish, okay, that eats
predator.
those non-native fish. And the population of the peacock bass has just absolutely exploded as well. Okay, certainly there have been better and worse years because they're not very tolerant to cold water. They're from the Amazon. When you think peacock, what do you think? You think Amazon, because you see all of these giant peacocks caught in the Amazon. So this is a fish that really thrives in a hot water environment. Again, in South Florida, Miami, Broward County, Dade County, really provides the perfect habitat for these peacocks. And it's really the same scenario, these drainage canals, ponds, lakes, not per se Lake Okeechobee, because you're not going to find them in Lake Okeechobee, correct?
A little too far north.
Yeah, the water's a little bit too
north.
cold, and especially during the winter when we get those cold fronts, you're not going to see these fish being very active at all. But certainly here in the southern portion of the state, a lot of peacocks. This happens to be, a specimen of what, a 5-pound fish or so. 4 or 5 pound fish, a really nice quality fish. Okay, this little hump on the head here indicates that that's a male. Okay, as this fish reaches maturity and breeding size, the males will get this little hump right on their head right there. This is a butterfly peacock. There are a number of different peacock species, correct? Butterfly peacock?
Yep, that's a butterfly.
How many different peacock species are there here?
Really, there's mainly butterfly and spotted.
And spotted.
Those are the two, because when they introduced the butterfly peacocks, there were some spotted peacock
Mixed in with them?
So once in a while, I'll catch a spotted peacock. Biggest one I've caught's about almost 5 pounds.
Okay, a little bit larger than this.
A little bit larger than that, but 1 in 100 are spotted.
Got it. So most of them are the butterflies.
Most of them are butterfly peacocks, yes.
Okay. Florida state record, I believe, is 9 pounds, something. Did you catch
9.3.
that too? Okay.
But he's caught some big ones.
What's the main difference between the two species?
As far as the spotted and the butterfly go, not much. It's just the spotted peacock doesn't really have these pronounced bars and a lot of these other crazy markings. It's just like these little spots all over them right here. You just don't get a lot of that crazy, those crazy patterns.
So much more vibrant on
Just
the
a-
butterflies.
Yeah, the butterflies just are more interesting looking. The spotted peacock is more of a uniform.
Now, certainly this isn't, I don't want to say the average size. This, I would consider that a trophy
That's a good
peacock.
one.
This is
Yeah,
a good
that's a good
quality fish. But it's a possibility every day, everywhere in their habitat. There's certainly not a lot of fish this size, but they're out there. And the same thing, the more time that you spend, the more effort, the more likely you are to catch a good quality fish like this. The average is probably in that 1 to 3 pounds,
Correct.
in that 1 to 3 pound range. Same thing, you see a lot of the peacocks bedding right up along the edges of the canals.
Yep.
Do you also catch them in the deeper water?
I do, more in the fall and the winter. Okay, when they're spawning in the summer, they like to find they don't make a big deep bed like a tilapia. They make they find a little pile of rocks and they'll scratch it out a little bit and then they'll lay their eggs on it and they'll kind of do their thing.
And they'll protect their young for months. I mean, I personally...
A long time, yeah. I
it's-
mean, for a while.
It's incredible what great parents they really are.
They are.
You
Yeah,
know,
they're
they
good.
will fight off anything. You want to catch a peacock, just drop anything on its bed, and they're going to come along and they're going to pick that up.
will.
Whatever it is that fell on their bed, where their fry is and their
But
eggs.
remember, when you're fishing a peacock bed, if you pull those parents, both of them off of that bed, the cichlids are going to come in and eat those babies, the eggs, the fry, whatever it is. And you know, I'm not going to tell you that I've never plucked a peacock off a bed on a charter when it's slow and I needed one. That's a lie. But I have. But if I can help it, I'll catch one of the fish, catch it quick, release it, get it back on the bed. Don't want to spook both fish off the bed, or else
Certainly
the Mayan
makes a lot of
cichlids and everything
sense.
are waiting. They're all waiting outside the beds. You'll see them start, and that's what they're fending off mostly. Are Mayan cichlids.
Got it.
And they're savage.
On the peacocks, same thing. You know, what's the pattern throughout the year on the peacocks?
I think peacock bass spawn multiple times a summer. They'll usually start sometime in end of April, early May, depending on when the water heats up above, you know, low to mid 80s. This year it was kind of late April. April was cool this year, so it was early May before I started to see them pair up. And they'll go all summer, and then we'll get that first cold
And you'll
front.
catch them all summer.
Well, you'll catch them, but not a ton. Like in the fall, October, November this year, I was catching 150 a trip.
150 a trip.
Yeah, and or 70 or 100. I mean, just tons of them because they
Wow.
all get on the structure when they're done spawning and feed. So they all get on the bridges and they get on, you know, any big tree or piece of structure or anything, and they're all just feeding.
And you're live chumming to get them all fired up.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, that's the difference. Listen, you can go fish a bridge, throw one bait, maybe catch one, maybe not.
Yeah.
He's live chumming at the next bridge.
Patrick Smith and I did a 2-boat charter for 2 days, and we caught 600 fish between the 2 boats in November. Was that October, November?
600
We were just talking about it
peacocks.
earlier. Well, just bass, peacocks, clowns.
Right, just 600 fish.
Triples, quads, triples all day.
Wow, that's
So, but
absolutely
that's like
incredible.
that's November. In my experience, November is the month when they'll get together in certain areas and you can really wear them out.
In the fall, late fall, early winter,
Correct.
November.
Before it gets too cold, before it's almost like they know winter's coming.
Right, so they know it's time to
they're-
eat and
they're
fatten
just-
up before.
They're eating. And we might catch the same fish a couple times in the same spot. You never know.
Right.
But we're going to do questions right after.
Yep.
How'd your thumb feel after that?
Really bad. Like I wanted to have it amputated, basically. Yeah, Patrick and I were talking about that after that trip. I was like, yeah, my thumbs, I need to chop them off with the cleaver.
So on the peacocks, bait of choice with a live bait would be, correct me if I'm wrong, a shad. Of course, I know you're fishing shad more than anything. Shiners, a lot of people
Shiners
are
work
fishing
well.
shiners.
Shiners work
Okay.
great, and I mean, shad are hard to keep alive and they're hard to catch. So if you're a recreational fisherman and you're looking to go fish for an hour for peacocks, get a dozen domestic shiners, and they eat those too.
Is there a difference between the gold shiners, the golden shiners versus the not
The
golden
domestic shiners?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
And what would be the optimal choice if you had that option?
I would definitely want wild shiners if I can get them, but they're hard to catch. And you have to like chum bread and weed patches and throw your cast net on top of just crap, and you're all black, and then you're pissed off before you even start fishing.
Right.
You know, because you're dirty and you're like, you know, you're just it's hard.
But
And
again, that
like I said,
wild
it doesn't-
shiners in that environment, it's going to
They're
be a
great.
more
They live
optimal
better,
bait. They're going to
sure.
live better. We all know those shiners that we get from the tackle shop. Sometimes by the time you walk out the front door of the tackle shop, you get to your
dead.
car and they're dead by the time you get to your car. Let alone, and they're this big and they charge you, I have no idea what. I mean,
$10
I
a
don't buy. Is that seriously what the price is? $10 a dozen. That's incredible, that price.
they're
But
big.
again, when it comes to that live bait, is there any other option for a live bait other than those shiners?
I mean, you can use like Seminole killifish. You'll see those in the lake sometimes. They're like mud minnows or whatever. You can cast net those. They're in the sand usually. Those work well. They don't swim great until something gets around them, and then they'll start tail walking. You can use a bobber with them. But yeah, that's really
That's really it on
about
the-
it, unless you're going to fish artificial.
Right. Now, I think on the peacocks, fishing artificials is more popular than fishing the live bait, and certainly it seems to be more exciting. You know, it's,
Yeah.
well, any type of fishing that you're achieving success with an artificial lure versus a live bait, to me, is more exciting. You know, you fool that fish on a fake, and I'd rather catch, whatever, 3 fish on a fake than 8 fish on live bait, so to speak. You know,
I
there's-
disagree, but that's fine. I want to catch
Well,
as many as possible. I don't care what it
you know-
takes. Artificial, live bait, I don't care.
There's
But yeah,
certainly a
that's okay.
stage in every fisherman's life when, they want to catch as many as possible. And certainly that makes a lot of sense when you have somebody paying you to take them out,
That's right.
to take them fishing.
That's right. Catch as
Your
many.
goal is for them to catch as many as possible. However, if you're, beyond that point, I don't want to say beyond that point, but a different mindset where it's about fooling that fish on an artificial, to me, that has its own set of unique rewards
It
that
certainly
come
does.
along with
Certainly
it.
does. I
So
understand.
on the artificial side, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, anything that really mimics their natural prey. I'm going to put this down for a second. Here, why don't you hold that for me? No, you're not allowed to keep it.
It's
Okay.
in the raffle.
Yeah, no, it's not. Okay? No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Is it real?
It's a real fake. So, and by the way, that's from King Sailfish Mounts, you know, who really, their release mounts are absolutely awesome. And I'll tell you, you know, I'm a huge fan, and we're kind of getting off subject, but I'm a huge fan of release mounts. My entire office has mounts all over it. I've got rooms in my house that have mounts all over it. You know, every time you catch a special fish, it's nice to be able to see that fish and to look at it and bring back those memories and relive that moment over and over again. So they're worth every penny. They're not cheap, but it's something that will last a lifetime. And it's not like the old skin mounts that fade and break and chip. These are fiberglass release mounts. There's nothing about the real fish that's involved with that other than it's a, you know, a perfect duplicate of the real fish, but it'll last forever, indoors or outdoors. So back to the artificial baits for the peacocks. Anything that mimics a shad, I mean, would that not be an ideal peacock lure?
It would be. I would put stronger hooks on it.
Okay.
Single hooks. I
Yep.
get rid of those treble hooks. The single hooks are much better on the fish than like ripping up their gills and their
Yep.
face with the treble hooks. So we usually change the hooks to single hooks.
So all of these
Better for
lures,
the fish. You know, lures are tough on fish.
yeah, no question about that. And all of these lures that you buy off the shelf, the Rapalas, the mirror lures, you know, the Tsunamis, there's a ton of different brands. Typically, they all come with the treble hooks. Why? Because imagine, you know, the lure company, they want you to land every single fish that you hook on their lure. You know, that's what they want. This way you can really have a lot of confidence in that line of lures and buy more of them. But as Bill mentioned, that's not the ideal scenario for the fish or for the fishermen. You want to be able to catch that fish, get them off the hook,
Unhook 'em
and
easily
go
and
catch another
do
one
as
as
little
quickly as you
damage
can.
possible.
It's certainly, of course, with fish that you're releasing. Obviously, it doesn't matter with fish that you're going to harvest. But with the peacock bass, not many people are harvesting the peacock bass. Certainly, some people are. Okay, the law, you know, Justin, what's the law with peacocks? How many can you keep? Two? 2 fish, 1 over 17 inches. So by law, you certainly can harvest these fish. But I think everybody will agree that something that is this beautiful, you know, and this exciting to catch is certainly worth much more alive than dead. You know, go eat a McDonald's fish sandwich.
Yeah.
You know, and that'll make up for it.
And
This
a lot
is
of the
worth
places you
much
catch
more
them, you're not
alive.
going to want to eat them out of there anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you have, Parker. You've eaten a lot of stuff that we would probably not consider eating. Yeah, I consider edible. Yeah, that's why he's glowing.
So moving right along, you know, we've talked again a lot about the lures. What are some other favorite lures? I think you brought some stuff
I
here
did.
that we can
brought
share
some
and
lures.
show.
Our favorite lures, like, you know, kind of for my team, for my crew, are Gill Reaper lures, and he's designed a lot of stuff with the help of some of our peacock lure experts. One of them sitting back there, Adam, Real Deal Adventures, and he paints them with like different tilapia patterns and cichlid patterns and things that peacocks really dig. And you see how he took those treble
Hooks are off, the little single J hooks on there.
Yeah.
Again, you can buy these inline J hooks now where the eye of the hook is in line. It's not offset from the shank, so this way the hook swims, okay, and trails right behind the lure appropriately. It will not affect the swimmability or the fishability of the lure, and you also achieve a maximum hookup ratio with this hook being in this orientation versus laying sideways. So don't just replace your trebles with single J's, make sure that you get the appropriate single J hooks that were designed to replace those treble hooks. But is this a hand-painted lure?
Does Jason hand
Yep.
paints these, doesn't he?
He originally started as a painter with toy trains, and then as a fisherman, he transitioned over to that.
Wow.
And then about 4 years now, he reached out to me and said, what do I want? And I asked for a largemouth bass, which you're holding,
Yep.
Mayan cichlid pattern, and a...
So these are your lures.
Yes. I had him bring them because
Raffle. No, look at that.
that's the first thing he said was don't pass my lure box
no.
around. Like, oh,
So
They're each individually hand painted.
each individual, and what we're looking at, I'm going to kind of just hold this up here. We're looking at a variety of a couple of dozen, maybe 3 dozen different stick baits and twitch baits and little plugs, and they all have these unique patterns and, you know, these unique paint jobs. Really cool. A lot of them are bright. It seems that the peacocks like those bright colors.
Yeah.
Is that right?
yeah, a
You
lot
know?
of the fish, a lot of the non-native fish are brightly colored. They're, you know, that's especially when they're.
Here's
when they're
another one.
small.
Look at that one. Again, mimics. It almost mimics a small
Yeah,
peacock.
peacock, yeah.
You know, so it's got that same pattern and that same color.
A lot of the South American, you know, a lot of those fish have a dot on their tail, so that's always a good color scheme.
Another one, you know, again, as you can see, they're all, you know, they're all really just handcrafted and painted with amazing detail to fool these fish. They really are beautiful lures. I see some poppers in here too. When would you fish a popper versus just a twitch bait or a stick
When
bait?
I have them chummed up and they're busting.
So when
on
you
top.
see them fish busting up on the surface,
Yeah, if you see them on a school of shad or a school of baitfish or tilapia or cichlids and they're actively busting them on top, that's when they're going to eat
a
something
top
on
water
the
bait,
surface.
right?
Yes.
And again, how
you
exciting
can
is
cast,
that?
I mean, oh, it's awesome. And you know, later in the summer, some of the fish will start peeling off the beds, and I'll find them in the canals on shad, busting them, and that, you know, they'll eat anything. Once they're engaged on baitfish like that, they're in the mode. Yeah.
This one, the koi? Yeah, that's what I was looking at that. I'm like, look at that. I mean, it literally mimics a little koi. Have you
koi.
caught any on this one?
Yeah, that's actually a jerk bait.
Okay.
So it's suspending. So if you actually just straight retrieve it, it wobbles just completely out of whack. So it's just a straight jerk. And then there is a reaction strike. And so you work that fast and hard, and with the reaction, the peacocks destroy it.
Nice, nice. And I think what he just mentioned is really important to share as well and to repeat. Just because you've got this beautiful lure doesn't mean you can tie it on, throw it out there, and just reel it in and catch fish. You know, everything has a unique retrieve or you know, it's designed to do a certain thing. And so you really need to be dialed in because, again, it seems easy, but it's not. It's all about the details. You know, like every fishery, in order to achieve consistent success, it's all about the details. And it's no different across the venues that you guys are fishing, you know, for the peacocks, the largemouth, the clown knifefish, which we're going to get to, the snakeheads. You know, obviously it's all about those details. Really, really important. And when you say, you know, work it really fast, so you're really being aggressive with that lure?
It all varies. Like right now, with all the rain, it's cooled off the surface of the water, so now they're down deeper. But when they're...
It's a good point, right? Have we thought about that? I mean, with all of this rain, and by the way, just so you know who we're talking to here, tell us a little bit about your peacock bass career. This is not just some guy sitting who I'm just talking to, okay?
I'm not anyway. I just run a social media page, but
Okay.
I've been fishing for peacocks, but my stress is really artificial. Yeah, we'll use live bait because obviously that's the easiest way to catch it. But artificial is my thing. I will throw it 95% of the time. And it all depends on what you're fishing. If it's 95 degrees out and it hasn't rained in a week, there's no oxygen at the top of the water column, so they're gonna move down a little bit. Right now it started raining, so what have they done? They've pushed down a little bit because the surface is cooler again. So everything varies. With that box of lure in there, some days Bill came down a month ago with us, and we were ripping lures at literally probably 10 miles an hour.
As fast as we could wind.
As fast
Wow.
as we can possibly, and we were watching them
And
chase it from
catching
30
them.
feet away to eating at our feet. Other times we barely crank it, and other times we twitch it. So it's a variation and different water columns depending on where you're fishing. Obviously from land it's a little different because 90% of the waters down here are blown out lakes, meaning they were constructed back in the 50s and 60s.
They're rock
by the
quarries.
government. Yep. So they're sitting off that ledge waiting to ambush anything comes through. So I'm a lure guy, don't get me wrong. I can't tell you how many fish I've posted that people go, damn, that's a big fish. And I've thrown a lure. I mean, my record, not to brag, I caught one, it's been, this November will be 6 years now, but my biggest one was just over 10 pounds. And I was throwing lures and he kept coming up, and guess what? He wouldn't eat. So guess what I did? Went down the street, here hooked a couple brim, came back, and 5 minutes later, boom, caught a 10.5-pound fish. So they're there, but those lures are going to attract them because peacocks, they want to chase. They're not going to eat a half-dead bait.
They're not like largemouth, where you're going to work a worm like so painfully slow that you're like,
So it's really an aggressive predator.
you
Okay,
want
it's
to
an
rip.
aggressive.
You want to
it's-
rip a bait. For
It's
a
a
peacock.
hardcore freshwater game fish.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
like a
very
jack. They're
aggressive.
almost like a jack.
Like a jack. And the same thing, you know, when you use jack, that's an excellent example. You can move a bait really slow by a jack. He's going to laugh. He's
Yeah.
just going to look at you and be like, I'm not eating that. You know?
Yeah.
But like you said, you know, you rip it by his face and he'll chase it. So they definitely want that chase. So really, really cool stuff. Time of the year we talked about, you know, we're saying that, hey, November or later in the year when they're not spawning. Here, this is for you. I'm only kidding you. Okay.
Jason.
You know,
Don't worry, Adam, I'll let you have that one.
all right.
Upgrade.
So, you know, a couple things that I just want to recap on that I thought were really important to mention. When you see those peacocks bedding, try and stay away from them, okay?
Or catch one.
Catch one, not both of them, because of course, like you said, all the cichlids that are swimming around, as soon as you pull those fish off the bed, they're going to dart in and attack them. The bullseye, the epicenter for peacocks, where is that?
I'm going to say it's probably like down where Adam is, like Miramar, Miami, Hialeah. Well, that's a big area.
Yeah.
I mean
They're not going to be in your spot, dude.
Yeah, don't
Just because
worry.
we're talking about it doesn't mean 100 people are going to walk
I
out
would
here
say
and go
like
peacock
Southern
fishing today.
Broward, Miami are the
Is
are the-
really the
But they're all the
focal-
way up into Coral Springs. I catch them in Lake Ida. We caught some today. They're all the way up to Palm Beach, all the way to basically West Palm Beach Airport. It's kind of the end of the line. They have some in Naples,
Structure-oriented,
down Golden Gate. I've heard that as well.
structure-oriented bridges, timber, you know, again, or are you looking for those sharp drop-offs? What is that key area
I
that's
noticed
going
like
to
in
hold
the
the
summer,
peacocks?
the peacock bass are just really close to the edges. I don't get a lot of bites in the middle or out in open water because they're bedding. They're all bedding close to the edges.
And they're not
of the
bedding
canal.
down deep. They're
No,
all bedding
like
up on
where
the
you
edges.
just can't see them in Lake Ida. Down south where the lakes are cleaner, you can see them because they're rock quarries that are very clear because of the limestone. So you can see the bedding. In Lake Ida, the water is very, very tannin, very difficult. And sometimes I'll see them. There's a couple places where if I really need one, I can slide in there.
Right, and know that
get
there's
one.
some fish
yeah.
there.
But overall, you're just casting close to the banks. As we get into the fall and the winter, then there'll be more on structures like bridges. I'll catch them right out in the middle of Lake Ida. I'll catch 25 fish anchored up off the boat ramp in 20 feet of water in Lake
Just
Ida.
right in the
'Cause
middle.
They'll push into that deeper water to stay warm because it takes a long time for that water to cool off at the bottom. The water on the surface cools first. So they'll slide into that deep water as we get into the fall and the winter.
Certainly makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it
Lot
stays
of sense.
warmer in that deeper water longer.
Let's go ahead and move along to what I think is quite possibly the most exciting, you know, the most exciting freshwater fishery that we have here in South Florida, and what has really developed to be something really, really unique. Okay, really unique, and that's the clown knifefish. If you're unfamiliar with a clown knifefish, get out your phone and Google clown knifefish so you can see exactly what we're talking about if you're unfamiliar with it. I tried to get a mount, okay, yeah, or look at all of the pictures on his Instagram page, which, by the way, is South Florida Bass Charters.
That's correct.
Okay, you can find Bill on Instagram. Easiest way to get a hold of him, direct message him. And I'm going to say this too. I don't care what you've been doing. I don't care if you've been fishing off land. I don't care if you've been fishing off your own boat in lakes and canals. You've got to spend a day with this guy, at least one day, because what you'll learn and what you'll see is completely 180 degrees away from what you're accustomed to doing. And it's not a plug for Bill. I'm not trying to get in business. This guy fished 400 and some odd trips last year. He doesn't need Mike referring business to him. Okay, I assure you of that. You know, it's for you, for your own benefit, because everything that you'll learn and that you'll take away from that day, you'll be able to utilize yourself and to increase your, you know, your success ratio on the water. It's money well spent. You know, it's local knowledge that's priceless. Okay, I get 20% of every
Okay, no
trip.
problem.
Okay, thanks.
I got you, Mike.
All right, thanks, man.
I got you, buddy.
So now that we're past that, let's get to the clown knifefish. How were clown knifefish introduced into our canals and waterways?
Aquarium releases.
Aquarium releases. So why, you know, you would say to yourself, why would anybody release a clown knifefish? I'll give you an example. In my office, I have a 125-gallon aquarium. 2 of the fish that I have in there are clown knifefish. Okay, I got them both. They were about this big from an aquarium store. One is now about this big and one's about this big. Okay, which is odd that they were both exactly the same size and one grew 4 times as large as the other one. Is it?
Yes.
Okay, but let's assume here comes a hurricane. And suddenly I lose power, and I have no power in my aquarium whatsoever, and I've got these beautiful fish that I've been growing for a couple of years that I'm attached to. I actually have them named, okay? And I feed them every day, and they're my buddies.
That's why you don't name your fish.
That's right. And now there's a hurricane. What am I supposed to do with these exotic fish that are in my aquarium? A lot of people decided, well, I'm just going to release them into a local canal or into a local lake. They never realized that those fish that they were releasing, those aquarium releases, were actually going to meet up in the middle of the lake and make babies. Okay, and so really just a few fish has turned into, has turned into a viable fishery. When was the first clown knifefish? When did you encounter the first clown knifefish?
The first one we caught was almost 10 years ago to the day today. I think it was like May 28th, 2008.
Okay, so 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
And where was that?
It was right in the West Canal by Lake Ida, right there under 95.
So that could be the epicenter of where they were originally released.
I think originally they were originally were released up by Lake Osborne.
By Lake
There's
Osborne.
more up that way.
Okay.
And there were reportings of them caught up there in the late 90s, early 2000s.
But kept hush hush. Nobody really they
Yeah,
probably didn't even know what they were
nobody-
catching.
There was no social media really, and
Right.
there was no way for people to really
Now
know.
forget it. You can't breathe without everybody knowing.
Yeah, everybody knows everything.
Everybody
now.
knows everything now.
Yeah.
So these clown knifefish now have reached really impressive proportions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen fish that you guys have caught that that your groups on your charter
Yeah,
have caught.
36, 38-inch fish over 10 pounds.
Wow.
12 pounds.
Again, that's a trophy fish in a canal,
Yeah.
in a lake. And these are hard fighting fish. They jump like crazy.
jump.
They pull drag like crazy. They swim backwards like crazy. Okay, one of the most interesting and unique fish that I've certainly ever caught and that I've ever even seen. By show of hands, who's ever caught a clown knifefish? Evidently, there's a lot of them. If we would have asked that 10 years ago, probably
There'd be no
nobody.
hands.
Okay,
You
there'd
have
be no
not caught
hands.
4. It's,
So in turn, what is the range of the clown knifefish? How far south, how far north?
They are starting to catch more because what happens is people come and fish Lake Ida.
Okay.
They put them in their live wells in their boats and they move them around. Right?
In the hopes of growing populations.
Populating them in other places. But Adam has caught one in Miramar or Miami Gardens. There's some being caught now, it sounds like up north, like in Sarasota, up that way. There's a population of them maybe starting. So they're spreading. People are moving them around.
And same thing, the clown knifefish native to Asia?
Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia.
Vietnam, Thailand.
And they eat them there. They make fish balls,
They
right?
make
Or fish cakes out of them. So
Yeah.
certainly an edible fish, but again, worth much, much more alive than dead.
To me,
you
they
know?
are, yeah,
You know?
for sure. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to eat anything out of there.
Is that clown knifefish, Joshua, considered an exotic to where you're not supposed to release that fish, or is it okay to release that fish? Got it. So just in case you didn't hear him, what he was saying is the clown knifefish, as far as harvesting those fish, you don't hear a lot about it. If people are keeping them or releasing them, certainly, ideally, it seems where releasing these fish is the way to go. They're a great game fish. It's certainly enjoyable to go fish these areas and have an opportunity to catch this exotic, hard-fighting, 36-inch clown knifefish. I mean, it's almost, for a freshwater guy, it far surpasses the largemouth bass as far as I'm concerned.
Wait. Well, I mean, a big largemouth is different now.
Yeah.
Now you're
a 10-pound largemouth versus a 10-pound.
I mean, I feel like a largemouth bass over 5 is a good fish. I mean, regardless. And
Anywhere.
they fight hard and they're great.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, a clown knifefish just gives you like another
Dimension, another,
of a fish to target that's unusual, and no one knows what they are, and they're fun, and yeah, you know, there's days when, look, I'll catch 5 clown knifefish, 1 largemouth, and 1 peacock. Thank God those clown knifefish are there for us to catch because, you know,
What kind of numbers are you seeing? So, you know, you said some days I'll catch 5. What's the top of the, you know, what's the most you've caught in a single day?
In a single day is 15.
15. All nice quality fish.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 15. So,
15 and at 30, about 30 bites.
okay.
That was in the fall.
In the fall. So
That
it's-
was last November. Last November was a great month. Like, we caught 15 knifefish one day. We caught the 2 biggest peacock bass I've ever caught in Lake Ida, a 7.9 and a 6.12
Wow.
within 2 weeks of each other. It's like just a magic month.
right, I'm starting to hear that November, if I'm going to go freshwater fishing,
Yeah, November books up really fast.
I bet it does.
But it's
I mean, that's-
traditionally very good. We had a bad winter this year on the peacocks. January we had a real winter this year. So January, we lost a lot of peacock bass from Lake Ida north to Lake Osborne up that way.
That
A
just
lot of
died
dead
because the
fish.
water was too
A lot
cold.
of dead fish. Didn't see a lot down south, but lost a lot of fish from Lake Ida north.
Mm-hmm.
Where does
So
that chain empty out into?
it empties out into the intercoastal eventually. Like at the Delray Boca line, and then there's the Boynton spillway, and then there's one up in West Palm Beach. So it's 3 spillways that those. the
So it's
system
all flowing
empties.
west
It
to
flows west
east
to east, like the
and
west
dumping in the
canals
intercoastal.
are up high like this at the western locks. So when they open the gate, that'll drain down, and then it drains down again into the intercoastal, and that's where everyone snook fishes. You know, where the spillways are open there.
Now, when those gates are open, do you see an increase in the activity of the fish when the gates are open?
Depends. Sometimes
On
it's
what?
How much bait is rolling through there, what the water quality coming out of those western canals is, what kind of biomass fish
So
is
just
behind
because the
gate.
locks are open doesn't mean
it-
the bite's going to be on
No,
fire.
It can be on fire, but it can also be
Dead.
nothing. Or the water quality is so bad that you throw your shad in there and it dies.
Does it
So-
get fed from Okeechobee?
What's that?
Like flies?
Do they bite flies? We're gonna, yeah.
We're going to talk about that in one
I've
second.
got some flies.
Yeah. Oh, hold on.
Oh,
FWC. Go
Yes.
ahead. Got it. So
Okay.
again, just if
so
you
he
didn't
said
hear him,
release all clown knife fish that you catch. That's what I heard.
just to repeat what he said, they are an invasive species, and technically you are not supposed to release the clown knifefish. If they slip out of your hands by accident, it is what it is. Okay, they're very slimy. If your leader breaks, your hook falls out of their mouth. You know, again, we certainly not encouraging anyone to break the law. That's not what we're suggesting.
No.
But the truth of the matter is, listen, I don't care if there's an FWC guy standing here or not. Here's the truth of the matter. These canals, Lake Ida, is populated by clown knifefish. That's not going to change. That happened. It's happening right now. They're not, you can't stop or eliminate all of those clown knifefish. And if I believe, and I believe you would agree with me, even if you harvested or killed every single clown knifefish that was hooked, there's still going to be clown knifefish.
No, they're there.
They're
there
there.
to stay.
They're,
not going
they're
anywhere.
breeding. They're
And they've-
making
and they've-
babies.
And they've gotten, you know, like for years, like for the first 3 or 4 years I was chartering, like our biggest clown knifefish day was like 5, and that was like a legendary day. And then like it went to a couple of years ago, it went to 7. Then we caught 9, 2 days back to back. And now last year we caught 15. This weekend I caught like 12 out of 30 bites. I mean, so they're multiplying. There's a lot more now than there were when I started. Like we'd catch 1 or 2 a week when I started and be like, wow, clown knife, awesome. Now it's like, oh, another clown knife, cool.
But
You
the
know what I mean?
tactics haven't changed. Like you're
No.
not doing anything
No, we're not doing
different
anything
today
different.
than
There's
you
just
did
more.
back then. There's just more of them.
biomass. I mean, there's just
Right.
more fish.
There's just
I mean,
more of them.
There's just, and I see them rolling, and there's just, you see more of them.
Yeah, and the canals obviously have enough forage to support.
Well, Lake Ida and Lake Osborne and the whole place is full of shad and shiners and tilapia and cichlids and everything else that these things
baby
could want to
peacocks
eat.
and
Baby
bass and
peacocks
everything
bass
else.
And crappie and bluegill and everything else. Yeah.
Right, so plenty of forage.
Lots of food.
Those clown knifefish, one second, do they have teeth?
Yes.
But they're small, right? I
They have
mean,
a
really
small,
little.
they have serrated teeth that are up under their gums, and then they have a set of teeth on their tongue which retracts. So when their tongue comes out and they eat, they have like these 4 or 5 like hook teeth that come out and grab. their prey. It's pretty savage. Yeah, when you look at,
Yeah.
you take a good look in there, you're like, okay, that's like a torture chamber. It's
Right.
actually-
No lip in a clown.
No, well, not really.
But that
no.
plus that smaller mouths too. You're not really
Yeah,
lipping
you're
that
not lipping. You
fish.
can
It's
get
just
them down
not.
in there, but yeah,
you know.
I'd grab them under the gills. Yes. Yeah, yeah, they're just like a tarpon. Just think of a tarpon, but smaller, and they have to come up and gulp air depending on the oxygen level in the water every 10, 15, 20 minutes. You'll see them pop up. And right now they're spawning, so they're basically in the same areas because they have eggs laid in the weeds, and the parents take turns going down and fanning the eggs with their tails to aerate them. So you'll just see them popping in the same spots, bloop, up and down.
But they're not up on the bank
No, they're
on beds like the peacocks.
No,
or-
they attach their eggs to debris, logs, weed, stuff like that. They don't make a bed.
Got
no
it.
bed.
Proper tackle for the clown knifefish.
I use 14-pound. You can use fluoro or regular mono leader because they do have sharp gill plates and enough teeth that they'll chafe through like straight 8 or 10, even 12.
Casting or spinning rods.
I prefer spinning rods because you're live bait fishing and you want to cast a light bait a long way because clown knifefish are very, they're spooky.
Spooky?
So you want to get your bait away from the boat. You don't want to just flip it, 6 or 8 feet off. And with a light 7.5 foot, I use 7.5 foot light medium spinning rods with 1,000 Stratic spinning reels.
So just a small reel. Obviously, you
pound-
don't need a lot of line
No,
capacity.
8-pound test monofilament is what I use, and a 14-pound fluorocarbon leader about 2.5, 3 feet
So
long.
live bait are artificial.
Live bait.
Now, will they hit an artificial?
It's very difficult, but they will. It's not.
14-pound monofilament. Now, why are you fishing the monofilament over the braid?
Because number one, I have a lot of children that fish with me, and if I get 10-pound braid wrapped on their finger in a big fish, it'll cut their finger off. Number one, mono will break. Number two, I get 3 or 4 tourists on my boat casting at the same time. And you ever try to get like 10-pound braid untangled with 4 rods together? You just cut it, and it's over, and it's very expensive. So mono, there's no real reason.
There's no
for
benefit to
There's
fish
no
the
benefit
braid
to
in
fishing
that
braid. I mean,
environment.
it's so sensitive. Every time the shad moves, someone thinks they have a bite and sets up on it.
Right.
So you have to realize I'm not dealing with, professional anglers every day, and I do get a lot of good anglers. But mono, there's just no reason not to use it.
Okay, and then your leader material you mentioned was what?
Was 14-pound fluoro
Okay,
is what
so-
I use.
15 to 20? Is that
15 is
too?
fine.
15 is
15,
fine.
20 is fine.
Okay,
Anything up
fluorocarbon
there.
leader.
14's as light as I've been able to get away with, and I like to fish as light as I can.
Hooks very small. Number
Number
4.
fours. Number four live bait hooks.
Little J hook, really small. And keep in mind too, you could probably get away with a little bit of a larger hook, but you're fishing such a small, fragile bait. That little shad is so small and
Correct.
fragile. If you fish a hook that's too big,
Or even a thick wire hook that'll just sink them to the bottom.
Right,
They're not
whereas-
going to look natural.
just a very thin ultralight hook is going to get the job
Perfect.
done. Easy to get out of the fish. If you can't get it out of the fish,
And if
obviously.
they swallow it, you cut it off, and they're
yep.
fine. You
And
know what I
don't
mean?
wanna
You're not
rip 'em
using some
apart.
giant hook, gut hooking them, hurting the fish.
Now-
we're obviously interested in releasing them healthy.
The average size of the clown knifefish?
I would say 4 to 5 pounds would be average. A big one is anything over 8. And then I catch probably 1 or 2 a month over 10.
Wow. Those are trophies, for sure.
Yeah, they're giant. They're big fish. And they're impressive because they're so tall. They're just, they have a big, a big
They're
profile.
so thin, right, and
Yeah,
so long and
they're
so
impressive.
wide. Okay. You're not sight fishing them per se. You're
I'm looking, I know there's areas where I see there's concentrations of them rolling consistently, like where there's some structure on the bottom, maybe some sunken logs. They'll go in there and get together and spawn. And when they spawn, they have like a really aggressive mating ritual where they bite each other. You'll catch them right now, and they've got bite marks. I mean, I've caught them where you pick them up and there's blood coming out of them because as you're catching them, their mates are biting them on the way in. So, right now they're in a real aggressive spawning pattern.
do they feed while they're spawning?
They
Still
will, but you
aggressive
got to
in
just
feeding?
beat them on the head with the bait like 1,000 times until finally
it just eats
they
it.
just eat it because they're like, I just don't want to stare at this shad anymore.
Now,
I'm
when
tired of
you're
getting hit in the head
when
with
you're fishing that shad on that spinning outfit, you want that fish to pick up that bait and swim with it a little bit before you lock up on
Yeah.
them, or is it just an instant? Hey man,
well,
let me
if
hook 'em"?
someone's on my boat has never caught a clown knifefish before, I'll be like, give it a 10 count. I don't care. Hook them, gut hook them. Let's get your first one, and then we'll get sporting.
Got it.
After that. And then it's like, yeah, a couple seconds. Wait till he's swimming away at a good pace and set the hook.
Now, you keep mentioning Lake Ida, Lake Osborne, obviously that's where you spend most of your time. Any other waterways where you're seeing the clown knifefish, you know, increasing in popularity, or you're just not spending a lot of time in
I'm
other
spending
areas?
all my time in Lake Ida right now. So, I mean, I can't really speak for that. I mean, there's some guys here that fish south more, but I don't think there's really an established population of them down south yet. The Turnpike Canal has them in it, all down
Filled
441.
with the clown knifefish?
Yeah, 441 Canal between.
Stay in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh,
I said the 441 Canal. They're out there. You just got to get out there and look around. You'll see them. They're rolling like tarpon. I mean, if you stand there for a little while and be quiet and kind of observe what's going on, you're going to see them. They have to gulp air every, they're not going to hide for long. You're gonna
Right,
see
but
'em.
just because they're there and you're seeing them
Doesn't mean you're gonna
doesn't
catch
mean
'em.
you're going to catch them.
No.
Okay, that's what I'm hearing out of all of this. That you really, and I saw it for my own eyes when
you
I
saw it when we
fished
fished
with you.
together,
You know
yeah.
that these are really, it's a smart species. They may be very aggressive and they may be a predator, but they're not dumb.
No.
And they're not going to hit everything. Okay, because otherwise you'd be catching them on every lure that you throw for largemouth bass or that you throw for peacocks. They
Guys
would be
are
all
catching
over
'em.
it.
Like the bass fishermen catch them as bycatch on rattle traps and jerk baits and
But
crankbaits.
certainly
and-
not at the level as the live shad.
No, not even
Okay,
close.
not even close. Okay, somebody had brought up a question about flies and can you catch them on flies? And I know you brought some flies that I believe you guys fished with today,
We did.
including a fly that you actually caught.
Yep.
A clown knifefish
I
on
didn't.
today.
Patrick caught a clown knifefish on that, something very close to that.
Was that you that asked that?
Yeah.
Okay, and I mean,
Yes,
clearly
it's a-
looks just like a shad.
Patrick, what do you call that fly? Polar fiber.
Polar fiber minnow. Okay. Do you catch a lot of clown knifefish on the fly, or there's the only one?
That's it.
So fly fishing may not be the most optimal way
Yeah.
of catching clown knifefish, but certainly possible.
Yes.
Okay. And some of these other flies, I
Yeah,
see
these
these poppers.
are just good for our normal peacock flies that we use a lot. The white clouser type flies and these any of these type of flies work. If they're bedding, obviously they eat the jigs and everything else good. So they'll eat the fly good too if you find them bedding. But like I said, don't catch both of them. Take one. But yeah, there's a couple examples. We've got like these little. He gave us a couple of these little minnow type things that he was throwing today, which are pretty cool. They're almost like a little swim bait segmented type. I mean, this isn't
look at
really.
that.
Yeah, it's not really like but it's like a little swim thing that's got some weight on the hook, gets it down.
So it's like almost like a little popper type of
Yeah,
head, but
it
it's got a
almost-
jointed body.
It reminds me of those things we use for Spanish mackerel all the time.
Yeah, like a gotcha.
Like a gotcha.
Like
Yeah,
the
that's
head
what
looks like a little gotcha plug. What's that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not
that
really
wouldn't
a fly
technically
anymore.
be a fly, right?
No.
I mean, I would.
But
now you true fly fishing or you use regular pole?
No, they
we're
would-
true fly fishing.
yeah.
That's what we did today. Yeah. No, we're true fly fishing for sure. This is not
Interesting.
really a fly, but if it's slow and you're dying to get a bite on a fly rod, you'll try anything after 500 casts and not getting a bite. So.
Now,
You
in
get
between,
desperate.
the clown knifefish and the peacocks, obviously you're also catching a largemouth bass. They
Correct.
fill in the gap, and is that still the primary, the bulk of the catch is at the largemouth, or is the bulk of the catch now these exotics, and the largemouth is taking a back seat to these exotics now?
Like this morning, it was mostly largemouth. We
Okay.
caught a dozen largemouth. We only caught 3 peacocks. Baited a lot of knifefish that they just wouldn't eat. So yeah, I would say I've got spots where I know I can go and catch largemouth to get some action if the peacock fishing is slow like it is right now. After all this rain, all the canals are blown out, the water's super dirty, the peacock fishing's tough.
Okay.
It's just, you're just not going to go out and catch a ton of them right now. So the largemouth is usually a morning, first thing in the morning type, get the charter going, get everybody catching a few fish.
Right.
and
Get 'em
then-
warmed up.
Right, yeah. So they're-
Dialed into
Yep,
the tackle,
exactly.
and then
Get them used to getting some bites, and then we'll start kind of targeting the exotic stuff later. Because peacocks don't care about the heat, neither do the clowns. They'll
Okay.
eat in extreme heat in any condition. The bass, a lot of times, first hour or 2 in the morning.
Do you
is the
find
best.
that the demand that you're getting, online or over the phone for trips, Is the demand where people want to catch these exotics, the peacocks and the
I
clowns,
don't
or is
think
it they
I've
just
ever-
want to
I
catch
don't think
fish?
I've ever booked a trip where someone's called me and go, Bill, I want to catch largemouth bass.
What do they say?
They say I want to catch peacock bass and clown knifefish.
Okay, so that answers the question right there. So it seems like the general consensus is that people more want to
Everybody
catch
can
these
catch
exotics.
bass in their backyard, or they've
Right.
caught them somewhere along the line. Everyone that fishes. has
Anybody
fished
ever
a-
catch a largemouth bass? Okay, anybody not catch a largemouth? You know who hasn't caught a largemouth bass? Okay. Have
It's
you
your
ever fished
favorite
in a
fish,
lake?
John.
You know,
Yeah.
so
So yeah, everybody's caught them. So yeah, that's the draw, you know, for fishing in you know, South Florida and Lake Kite. Everybody wants to catch something they can't.
that they don't normally catch. I mean, those clown knifefish are just so, again, they're so exotic
Yeah.
and so exciting to catch. And your backyard, our backyard, but certainly literally your backyard, I think you live on the lake,
Close.
don't you?
I live
Okay,
close.
close to the lake, is that focal point. So, and you've got it so dialed in. And, you know, one thing Bill and I talked about, the key to really catching those clown knifefish, certainly upwards of 8 or 9 a day, is the live shad, is the live bait. You know, and how you catch that live bait and how you keep that live bait alive, well, that's your gig, you know.
Right.
I mean, you've earned that right. You've been doing hundreds and hundreds of trips every year. The last thing you want is 40 guys out there at your spot.
I don't want four
you know,
guys out there doing
right.
it. But
You know.
yeah, 40 would be really tough.
And that certainly makes
It's
sense.
not a big area.
Right.
You know.
But like I said, and you know, as I mentioned earlier, certainly a worthy investment. I think most of your trips are half-day trips.
Yeah, half
okay?
day we can get it done usually in a half day.
Half day, 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever that is on
4
your
hours.
half-day trip, and you can have a great time and learn more about this fishery than certainly you're going to learn standing here, you know, or sitting here for 90 minutes. I know we fished together for a couple of days,
Yeah.
and I walked away from it all and said, wow, this is a whole different level of freshwater fishing that I've never experienced. You know, it's so different than just that typical rubber worm for a largemouth bass,
it
which
is.
could be exciting too.
No,
I mean,
I
there's
love
no
it when they're
question.
biting and you're on like a private golf course and there's tons of big bass and you're just whacking them. That's great. But lake kite is tough. Artificial fishing, you know, you have to really be
Lucky?
into it and lucky. Yeah, lucky would come to mind. Very
Patient?
patient. Yep.
Okay.
So you know,
So it's all a
tough.
live bait fishery in Lake
it
Ida.
just-
Same in Lake Osborne?
Yeah, it just
All
is.
connecting?
Yes.
Same process,
Same
system.
stuff. Lots of bait up there. You know, lots of food, and you know, I have better luck with lures with hungry fish that are like isolated, or you know, it's tough. You know, it's the lure fishing in Lake Ida.
Bill,
is tough.
before we wrap this up, any additional tips, anything that you can tell us regarding those clown knifefish or the peacocks or the snakeheads, you know, anything else that you can add that we haven't touched on?
I mean, really, I think we've touched on most of it. I mean, it's like everything else. If you put the effort in and the time, and you know, try some different things, try some different places, different tactics, like we've talked about today. Obviously, the more you do it, I mean, snakehead fishing, I learned it just walking for miles, and I don't even like walking. But I mean, and it's like 100 degrees out, and it sucks, and you're walking and walking and walking. But that's how we found spots. You know, it's trial and error. You start to see patterns. You start to
Do you
dial it
find,
in.
you know, when you just said a key word, you start to see patterns. Do you find those fish in the same areas year after year?
Absolutely.
So
yes.
once you've got that
Once you've
pattern
got the
dialed
pattern,
in,
it comes, the
they're
fish
there year
fish
after
are
year.
pretty predictable in fresh water. They're not migrating. They're not pelagic fish in the ocean that could just go away. They're stuck. They're in there somewhere, and it's just a matter of kind of figuring
where.
out where and when.
Right.
That's all it is.
But also not quite as easy as you make it seem, because there are a lot of canals and there is a lot of water
big
to
area.
fish.
It is.
Right, there is
It's
a big area. But very important to find those patterns, as you mentioned.
is.
And you know, like we said with the snakeheads, pretty, I don't want to say simple, pretty straightforward. Tie on a frog.
If you use those frogs and you walk enough, you are going to get bit or catch a snakehead guaranteed. I mean, it's just a matter of, you know, finding a spot that's holding them.
Right.
That's all. We do have a hybrid species of bass in Lake Ida and Osborne as well. It's a fish that's stocked by the state. It's a part striped bass and part white bass, and they're a test tube created fish. And yeah, it's a hybrid. And you call them wipers. There's lots of different names for them across the
Sunshine bass.
is
But
what
it,
we call 'em.
essentially it looks like a striped
It looks like a
bass.
striped
It's a
bass, but it's a
silver
broken
fish,
lateral line.
right, with black lines that looks like a striped bass. Tell me more about those sunshine bass. Are you
Okay.
starting to see more and more of those as well? Is it consistent?
It's more of a fall and winter time thing for us, or really early in the morning. The biggest one, Butch Mosier, another guide who's been in Lake Ida for years, caught a 10-pound, 2-ounce
Wow.
sunshine bass. When was that? Like in March, April?
Wow.
Yeah. His charter was late. He went out off the boat ramp, threw a shad off the boat, and caught
caught a
a 10-pound
10-pounder.
sunshine. And he's been there for 40 years, and that's the biggest one he's ever seen.
Wow.
So, and Patrick said he saw a dead one the other day that was 7 or 8 pounds. Yeah.
They
so,
were stocked there,
Yes.
obviously, but
Yeah.
is it continuing? Are they continuing to stock those fish
They
year
were
after
talking
year?
about them being underutilized for a while and not doing it anymore, but we're cast netting little ones right now, so they must have dumped a whole new batch because they do not reproduce.
Josh, do you know anything about the hybrid bass? Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, it's a great game
Yeah,
fish.
it's a good game fish. They fight hard. They're fun. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, never caught one.
No snook or tarpon in the lakes, unfortunately.
Right, that was his question. Are there any tarpon and snook in Lake Ida or Lake Osborne in that chain of lakes? You're not seeing any landlocked tarpon
No.
or snook or anything
And
like
I
that.
don't know why not, because it's a place where you would think being connected
With
to
so
the
much
intercoastal
forage and-
people, throwing them over the lock into the freshwater or
Right.
whatever, they'd be in there, but no, not to my knowledge.
Interesting. Any other questions? Yes.
When you're chumming, how do you position the boat?
His question is, when you're chumming, when you're live chumming no shad, how do you position the boat in relation to the structure that you're fishing?
Yeah, I typically just get upwind of wherever I'm trying to fish on whatever type of structure, whether it's a pile of logs or a big tree or something. I'll just position myself upwind so that I can sling my chum baits towards whatever type of structure. So I'm just upwind of it, basically.
And Bill, how much are you chumming? When we say live chumming, very much like when we're offshore chumming for blackfins or king mackerel, we're not just throwing netfuls of bait over the side of the boat. Don't get that impression. That's not what's happening.
It depends. If the fish are biting good, I don't chum at all. Sometimes I won't chum at all if I'm getting bites, and I only chum as much as I need to.
To get them fired up.
Right. If it's slow, I'll dump more. If it's, if we're getting steady bites, I'm not going to dump a bunch of bait for them to chase off into the distance, if I got them there already.
Right, so you're
it's-
basing it all on what you're
On what
seeing
I'm
out on
seeing,
the water.
That's correct.
That certainly makes sense, yes.
Now, do the clown knifefish, they favor current and overhead cover?
No.
So his question was, the clown knifefish, do they favor current and overhead cover, like overhanging branches, docks, things to that nature, bridges? Is there a preference there?
Bridges, yes. I do catch a lot of knifefish around bridges. They like, they're nocturnal feeders by nature. So they do like the shade of bridges and overhanging trees and stuff like that, but they're mostly like an open water nomadic fish. Once they get to a certain size and they're not afraid of getting eaten anymore, they'll just go out into the open water and kind of do their thing. What was your other question? Did someone ask me?
Current and
Yeah,
current.
oh, that's right. No, clown knifefish do not like moving water.
And let's understand, when we say moving water in these canals, the only way you're going to have the moving water other than being wind driven is when
the
they open up
spillways.
those spillways and water is flowing out toward the intracoastal. You're going to have an artificial current, so to speak,
Correct.
a man-made current.
They stay off to the sides in those little eddies, or you just get away from those canals where the current is, and I'll go into these back canals, get away from the current. They like stagnant, non-moving water.
Clear or nasty water?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. No, doesn't matter. Both.
Yes.
Typically use any kind of weight.
Do you typically use any kind of weight, split shots or anything like that?
Yes, when I'm fishing in the lakes, when it's more than 10 or 15 feet deep, the only problem with the leads is your live baits die fast. Once the shad stops swimming, the lead will drag into the bottom, then you have a big clump of green, nasty algae on them. So I'll throat hook the bait sometimes to kind of steer them down. That's an alternative to using a weight. try to get them, get them down rather than nose hooking them or, hooking them in the dorsal fin or the tail where they stay on top. You can throat hook them and kind of pull on them and get them to, like you snook fishing, same thing.
Interesting. Yes.
What do you think about all the other exotic fish in Lake Ida? 'Cause I know you caught marijuana.
So his question is, what do you think about all of the other exotic fish in Lake Ida, including potentially, I believe he mentioned an arowana, okay, that you've also caught an arowana.
I did catch an arowana.
Okay.
Yes.
An arowana is from Asia also, looks like a tarpon, okay? It's got a funny kind of mouth that, and eyes that look straight up. Couple of barbels under, its chin. And again, really a long, slender, silvery fish. They do come in various colors, but usually they're that silver formation. They breathe air. I've got one of those swimming around with my clown knifefish that I study every day, and they just, an amazing predator. They
Yeah, they're
really
really
are.
cool.
Really, really cool fish. So getting back to it,
What
other
do I
than
think? What do I think of arowanas swimming? What?
Would you be happy if we had like red-tailed cats?
Yeah, I would be. I'd be really happy.
the more fish that his charters can catch,
Yeah,
the happier
obviously-
Bill's going to be.
Obviously, the better for
Right.
me. That's right.
That's
The more
pretty much what it
species and the
boils down
bigger,
to.
The better.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yes. His question is, do you move a fly as fast as you would for a peacock for the clown knifefish? And I think what I got out of all of this, and I'm sure Bill will correct me, fly fishing is not the ideal way to target the clown knifefish. Okay?
it's
That
not.
very, very few, other than the one that he caught today, okay, very, very few, if any others, have ever been taken on fly. So if you want to specifically target the clown knifefish, fly fishing is not the way to go.
Just go home and take a hammer and just beat your hand with it, like on top of your workbench. That's a kind of like what fly fishing, my experience fly fishing for clown knifefish is. I mean, I've had hundreds of them roll, or 50, 100 fish rolling around the boat, 2 fly fishermen going at it, chumming, doing everything you can do, and not get a bite for 4 hours. And it's just like, why?
But the guys fishing the bait are catching
Oh
them.
no, we put the fly rods away, threw a live bait in the water, and caught one in 5 minutes. I'm like,
Great
the
eyesight?
flies-
Is that
the
their
flies
eyesight?
look great. I mean, I don't, it's just really, it's kind of a head scratcher because they're a surface air breathing fish like a tarpon. Tarpon will, respond to flies. They just,
Don't. Maybe
Don't.
somehow they're sensing that clearly is not
It's
a
not
natural
food.
bait.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not just a reactionary strike to the fly moving.
Yeah.
There's more to
There's
it than
more to
that.
it.
They can sense that, hey, just because it's moving doesn't mean it's a legitimate meal.
no, it doesn't. So yeah, it's a
Maybe
tough.
like a shark and have to have an electrical.
maybe.
Something. Yeah, you never
Spray
know.
some-
I mean,
spray some Uncle
it's a
Josh
mystery. They really
pork
are
rind juice on it or
really
something.
unique.
Patrick.
Yes.
The fish tank guys say that they have an electrical.
Okay, so there's the answer. The fish tank guy said that they have sensory organs that they can sense, of course, if it's a natural bait or a natural prey or not.
Yeah, vibrating like a rattle trap or something like that.
So maybe we need some rattles.
It's just locked to the fly. That's all it is.
Right. Yeah, certainly makes sense. But again, to answer your question, fly fishing, not the ideal scenario when you're specifically targeting clown knifefish. Certainly will work on peacocks. Guys
Yep.
catch peacocks on flies all day long, largemouths on flies, and who knows, maybe one day a clown knifefish will jump on that fly, but don't specifically target them on fly. Okay? Yes? Will any other saltwater bait work in Lake Ida? Natural or artificial baits? Like a mullet? Because you're not going to swim a ballyhoo around in Lake Ida.
Maybe a gog. Maybe bring a kite out there, Max, and put the kite out with some gogs.
So I would have to say a small finger mullet would probably be
A
your
finger
only
mullet
chance.
would probably be your best, best bet.
Okay.
Or maybe John's little mullet, the crazy mullet he's
Guys,
got.
we're just going to address a couple more quick questions and then we're going to wrap it up here. Okay, we're going to do our raffle. Again, we are going to be up here afterwards to address any other questions. Go ahead.
I know you have your way of catching shad, but for the average Joe, if I want to go out there and look for shad.
Excellent question. For the average Joe, if I want to go out there and look for shad and catch them, what do I do?
Net do I need so they don't get all?
8 foot. I throw an 8-foot cast net, 1/4 inch mesh, and they're in the lakes. They're in Lake Osborne. They're in Lake Ida. They're in Lake Eden. So it should be just a matter of cruising around, finding them, flipping, or finding them on your bottom machine and throwing your cast net.
Looking just like filters when you
Exactly
Yeah.
the same. Exactly
What
the
kind of
same.
sign do you typically look for?
Well, I kind of, there's a lot of signs. But
Yeah.
But is it typically you see them work in the top, or you?
Well, I think,
Both.
like
And
what
you
I
can't
heard out
chum
of
'em.
that, sometimes you'll see them dimpling,
Yeah,
up
you
on
can
the
see them dimpling on the
surface.
surface. You can mark them with your machine. They do not chum. Bryson, go easy back there.
Okay.
It's my son. You can just, there's a couple different things. Early in the morning, you'll see them popping a little bit. During the day, they get in real tight schools down in the deep water, and they're difficult to find. Easier early in the morning.
Did that help you?
That did help me out a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Last question here, guys, and we'll wrap it up.
I have.
His question was, have you ever tried kite fishing for bass? Is that what you, just kite fishing in a lake?
I did.
Have you ever tried kite
I
fishing in
did.
a
I
lake?
kite fished in Lake Osborne, and I caught a largemouth bass on the kite
No.
with a shad.
On that note,
Yep, I
guys,
have.
on that note, first off, a really big hand to Bill, okay? I mean, again, this guy is clearly an expert in this field. You've got to know something if you're spending 400 trips out there a year. Every year, you're certainly going to be dialed in. And I'd have to assume a huge portion of your business is repeat business as
Correct.
well.
A lot.
Okay? A lot of exciting stuff. Freshwater fishing down here just is not your typical freshwater fishing like it
No.
is in most other parts of the state. A lot of exciting species, a lot of exciting tactics. I can't stress enough, taking it from personal experience, contact this guy, set yourself up, get out there for half a day, or whatever it is, a couple of trips, and you'll learn a ton of information. Get dialed in. There's no substitute for time on the water. And I think that relates to every fishery, offshore, inshore, or freshwater. You're not just going to go out there and be an expert. You've got to put in the time and put in the effort. And the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And the more rewarding that it is for you, the more you're going to want to do it even more. And you're going to get hooked into that cycle, that vicious cycle that we call fishing. Right? Okay, it's addictive. It's like a drug. It's why we're all here today. We just want to increase our game, be more successful on the water. So again, southfloridabascharters.com, or you can look Bill up through his Instagram page. I'm sure he's got some business cards here as well. That'd be more than, but
I don't do business cards.
I'm trying to help you out
No,
here.
yeah,
man.
I'm sorry.
All right,
I'm
all
sorry.
right. Okay.
Business cards, I just throw them away.
Gotcha.
That's it.
So just message them, and certainly if you put in some effort, you can find them. So one last time, a big hand for Bill. Okay.